Hey guys, what is up? SuperKmanrocks here, and I am here for my LEC Week 2 recap, overview, and power rankings. It was a very, very fun week in the LEC this past weekend, and I'm very excited to go over it game by game. If you are excited, please go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below. Leave a like while you're there. It really does help the channel. Obviously, subscribe if you enjoy what I do, but let's not waste too much time. Let's jump right into our first series of the weekend, and that was Misfits Gaming taking on Excel. A really solid win here for Misfits. VTO showing again why he is probably the most hard-stuck player in the West at the current moment. He is easily the best player on this Misfits Gaming team, and he has been the entire year. They have started now 3-1 with a solid win here over Excel. And in all three of those games, I would say VTO is the reason why they have won. Schlatzen had a good game here and there. Here it had a good game here and there. Neon got some kills in this one, had a pretty decent game. But overall, I mean, it's been the VTO show for Misfits, and that continued in this game. Although it wasn't as clean-cut as maybe the time or the score or anything will tell you. Excel kind of had this game in the palm of their hand, at least a little bit. They were on soul point with 3 dragons. They were down a little bit of gold, but, you know, if you get that soul, you can start snowballing a little bit. You have gold on the Aphelios. You have gold on the Xin Zhao. You have ways to get back into this game. But then they decide to go for 4th dragon when they're super far down. Misfits contest. They get absolutely blown back at the fight, and then from there on, it's just unwinnable. Another case of Excel just maybe overreaching just a tad too much, but being decently proactive early in the game. I want to give a small shout out here to Patrick, who did have a pretty good game, even if that team fight wasn't perfect. And then Marcoon actually played the early game a lot better, which is something that we are definitely excited to see out of him. He was I was a little critical of Marcoon earlier in the year, early in week 1, I should say. It's really only been 1 week before this. Marcoon had a really rough week 1, but he had a pretty good game here to start off, and they just made a little bit of a bonehead call going into 4th dragon, I should say. That kind of cost them. But outside of that, it was still a pretty good performance here from Excel. Definitely what you want to see out of Misfits in general, with VTO kind of taking over. Neon having a really good game. Neon was someone I hyped up going into the season. I like Neon as a player. Here it bouncing back a little bit. Schlatzen not, getting destroyed. And then Mursa being a good Leona engage. Just a general good game here for Misfits. These two teams are kind of battling it out for that, 6th or below kind of playoff spot. That's, maybe 5th. I don't know. Probably not 5th. Top 5 is pretty determined at this point, but that 6th spot in the playoffs is really up for grabs. Misfits getting a win here is really going to help their case. If VTO keeps playing like this, I don't think it really matters how poor the rest of the team around them keeps playing. He's going to carry that team into playoffs. Jumping into game 2 here of day 1, we had the bottom of the leaderboards taken on the top, when we had Astralis taking on Fnatic. Now, this was a 41-minute game, and in your mind, you could probably see this as a classic trap game. The worst team taking on the best team. Fnatic, a team that is very much known for dropping games to teams they absolutely shouldn't, just having performances that aren't really up to snuff for them. But that was not what this was. This was a Fnatic win pretty cleanly, although the game did try to change that at some points. Still a decently clean Fnatic win here. They got really ahead early, mostly due to the fact that Upset and Hylissang are just that freaking good. Hylissang on the Zilean this game. You wouldn't even believe that it was Zilean. He plays Zilean like it's Leona or like it's Alistair. He just plays so aggressive on Zilean, like it's Pyke almost. And it's really fun to watch. What an amazing start to the year that Hilly has had in general. But this game was also really good. Yeah, he's going up against Kabe and Promiscu. Maybe the worst bot lane in the LEC. But Upset and Hylissang have proven at this point they're probably the best bot lane in the West. We'll see what happens when, like, Hansama and Core JJ really get to play together. But right now, they're, to me, pretty clearly the best bot lane in the West. And they're firing on all cylinders. Hylissang is going to be my player of the game again. Topside was a little questionable at points. Wonder kind of went back a little bit to his inting ways, but he kind of turned it around. He had some really good plays, some really bad plays. Razork was fine. He didn't really control the map like I would have hoped he would in the Lee Sin Poppy matchup, although you're decently even. I actually think that's not a terrible matchup for the Poppy in general. And then Humanoid was fine, but really, the story of this game is, and has been for the entire season for Fnatic, just how good Upset and Hylissang are, and how much they are really carrying this team into being one of the best teams that we have seen start a year in a very long time in the LEC. As for Astralis, I mean, you stuck in there. Objective bounties are real strong, aren't they? This game was really close because objective bounties gave them, I don't know, it felt like 3k gold. Just something ludicrous. The fact they were in this game is absurd, but, you know, Fnatic was trading objectives when they were super ahead, which is something that you just can't do in this meta. You kind of have to just control the entire map if you want to win, which is kind of hard, I know. It's not something I'm a fan of at all, but yeah, it's kind of what happened here with Astralis. They were able to get back a little bit just due to objective bounties. Dior got a bunch of gold on him and was able to fight. The Xayah is obviously going to be useful in those team fights, and then the Gragas for diving the backline. My dud of the game is going to go to Zanzara here. It could go to Promiscu at support because, again, he got support gapped really hard here, but I think Zanzara was really the big disappointment for me this game. When you're playing Poppy, as you guys know, Poppy jungle is a pick I really like. When you're playing this pick, you have to be aggressive early, even into the Lee Sin. You have to try to make plays, especially if you have a Xayah Rakan lane going into a Jinx Zillion. You have to get that lane relatively ahead, and it's just not something that happened here. He was way too passive early, pretty much no ganks, and then late game, Poppy falls off hard. That's what happens with Poppy. She essentially just becomes a tank that can push one person away and then die, because she's not even really that tanky when it comes to late game. So, yeah, just not a great game here from Zanzara. I don't think he played his champion to the maximum potential. But not a good game from bot lane either. Of course, they got outclassed here by Upset and Hylissang. They're maybe the worst bot lane in the West, going up against the best. It was just a little bit of a gap in general. But yeah, very solid win here for Fnatic. They didn't fall into the trap game, and objective bounties, you know, couldn't swing this one in favor of Astralis no matter how hard they tried. So, Astralis, you know, they're bad, but they put up a fight here, and then Fnatic is rolling, and they kick off week 2 exactly how they ended week 1 with a massive dub. Jumping into our third game of day 1 here, we had G2 Esports taking on SK Gaming. A solid G2 win here. Nobody was really too shocked when they came out and dominated this one, but there are a couple takeaways from this game. The big one for G2, the new additions are playing great. That's really the big addition. Broken Blade looked fantastic. Yes, I will get to the pick in a second. Targamas is actually going to be my player of the game, although Broken Blade played fantastic. You could give it to either of them. They both deserve it. I just thought Targamas played a little bit better, but you want to give it to Targamas, you want to give it to Broken Blade, give it to whoever you want. They were both phenomenal. And then Flakked played well on the Jhin as well. So did Yankos, by the way. Pretty big jungle gap here over Gilius, but we've seen that over and over again. It's crazy to think that in this game, Caps was kind of the weak link for G2, and I think you can make that statement about the year so far, which is really weird to say. You know, I have no doubt that Caps will eventually wake up and get back to form and become Caps again, but certainly the beginning of the year has definitely been a little questionable for Caps. The name change has certainly not started off with a bang, but the team is picking up the slack from where he left off. Let's talk about the tank Akali, because, you know, I'm sitting here recording this on the 27th of January, which means that, you know, 1.2 is out. It's been out. We know what's happening. We know that this is gutted. We know that this is getting absolutely destroyed, and that is by far the best news you could possibly have. This thing is so disgusting. You have Broken Blade this game, and I don't want to take away from how Broken Blade played it. Broken Blade is a phenomenal Akali, and that's a big reason why this worked, is because Broken Blade's mechanics are so good on that champion. But it is important to note that he had 3k health walking around this game and was able to one-shot almost everyone in it. Just a terrifying champion. And that's getting gutted. That's pretty much gone, which is a good thing for pro play, I think, in the long run. Glad to see it get at least a little bit of play. We saw it Wonder play it, but not necessarily to this kind of success that Broken Blade did in this game. A lot more resources invested his way in general. Broken Blade always does well with resources. That's what I've always said about Broken Blade. When he's able to get gold on him and get ahead, he can really take over and win you games. You know, and that's exactly what happened here. Targamas with some beautiful Bard plays. This is some of the best Bard that I've seen in pro play in quite a while. Usually we see that out of the other Western region, at least in terms of Bard play, quote-unquote, but we saw it in Europe here today. We saw it. Targamas was phenomenal. I remember this one engage by Jarvan, on like Gilius on the Jarvan, who he just tried to, full engage on Jarvan. One Bard ult is just like, well, sorry, looks like you all die now. It's really just beautiful. A great game here from Targamas. He's easily going to be my player of the game. Yankos also just, the Smite King. G2 50-50s more objectives than they have to, but Yankos always wins the 50-50s, so, really, is it even that big of a risk if Yankos is that clearly going to win all of them? Just a really good performance here from G2. As for SK, they looked a little lost. They're just not on the same kind of level. This game wasn't really close in any aspect. I like the Lee Sin top pick. I've talked about that in other regions. Lee Sin top, I think, is something that can definitely work. Even into Tank Akali, I actually don't think that's a terrible matchup, but Broken Blade just got super far ahead in this one. There was really nothing Gen X could do. It was pretty top gap for a while. And then Treats is actually going to be my dud of the game here. He's had a really good start to the year, but these Nautilus engages were almost nowhere to be found. He was essentially playing Peel for the backline the entire game, and that was not working. Akali was able to delete people pretty much without any sort of question or difficulty. So, Treat's not really having a game to remember. He's kind of been the standout player of SK up to this point in the season. One bad game's not going to make me completely change my mind about how Treats has been playing, but definitely did not show up here. It was kind of support and top gap is the best way I could put it. A little bit of jungle gap as well. Map control from Yankos is insane, and then the smiting from Yankos is insane. Gilius tried to make those engages work, but, it's kind of hard to do that into this comp. So, in general, a very, very solid win here for G2. They look like they're cruising through the first couple weeks of the season. I think the big takeaway for them is how well their new signings are carrying their old signings. Yankos has actually had a great start to the year. I don't want to take that away from him. But Caps has been really, really slow to the ball. And if he's going to continue like that, you're going to need these kinds of performances out of Broken Blade, Targamas. Those kinds of players really do need to step up, and that's exactly what they're doing right now. As for SK, they're a bottom of the barrel kind of team. Losing to G2 isn't going to completely derail your season. You're going to need to start picking up wins against teams like Excel and Misfits and, BDS. Those are the teams that, if you're Excel and you want to stay relatively competitive, you have to pick up wins against them. Losses like this aren't going to be absolutely disastrous for them, so I'm not pulling the panic button or anything just yet on that. But, good win for G2. Good win for G2, and happy to see the young guys actually performing. Jumping into our fourth game here of day one, we had Team BDS taking on Team Vitality. In Vitality's first win of the year, they do kind of get a little bit back on track in this game. I think this was a perfect game to play for them to kind of get their mind right, for them to kind of get a little bit more confidence under their belt. Pretty much everybody in this game went to a comfort pick, and it worked out for them. They do pick up the really, really easy win here. They are just the better team, by far. I think the big takeaway from this game is, individually, these are still great players. I know a lot of people were questioning whether or not some of them had regressed a little too hard, especially with the way they had started the season, but individually, these guys are phenomenal. I think every single lane had like a 60 CS lead. It was ludicrous. I didn't even know there was going to be that much CS on the map for them to take, but yeah, Vitality was just up in every single lane, basically winning all the time. My player of the game here is going to go to Selfmade in the jungle. He controlled the map essentially perfectly. I love Syncroft. I actually think he's had a decent start to the year. He's probably been one of the more consistent members of this BDS team. Selfmade was the guy here in this one. His Olaf, we know that's a pick that he really enjoys. That, the Evelyn, like these are picks that we know that he plays a lot of. And it's just good to see him kind of get back to his comfort level. It's good to see him get back to being a little more aggressive, being that takeover style jungler that he was for so long. It's good to kind of see him facilitate that around the map. As for the rest of the players, I want to give a big shout out to the bot lane here, Karzi and Labrov. They had a great game here. Yes, they're going into one of the weaker bot lanes in the LEC, but they still looked really good. Perks was dominant in lane, while he didn't necessarily have a ton of team fight moments here on the Corki. He was good in lane, and then Alfari kind of the same thing in the top lane. Just a necessary win for Vitality, and they did it in a way that I think does inspire a lot of confidence in some of their fans. But let's talk about BDS. This team is struggling. I think a lot of people had, mixed expectations on this team going into the year. They've been their performances have been mixed for sure. There have been some good performances from players like Syncroft and Nuclearant. Nuclear going back to that Syndra over and over again, that's clearly his pick. He's going to need to win, though, if he's going to pick that over and over and over again. It's not a pick that... It's not something that I would consider not meta, but it's definitely not one of the top-tier mid laners in the meta right now. So if he's going to go back to that pick over and over again, you've got to be able to win lane on that, and he didn't in this one. But Syncroft and Nuclear have had moments. It's really the bot lane that has been the gigantic problem for this BDS team. They're not the worst bot lane in the LEC. Kabe and Promiscu have that one locked up for now, but Xmatty and Limit are getting pretty close. Limit is going to be my dud of the game here. He had a stinker on Nautilus. Really nothing to do. Nowhere to go. His engages were nothing because this team is super far down. A rough game. We're getting summer Limit, which is definitely the problem here. I would say, Xmatty's not been good, but he was better in this game than he had been at the beginning, in week 1. He had a really bad week 1. He was a little bit better in this one, but this time it was Limit's turn to just completely let it down. Not a good start to the year for the BDS bot lane. A lot of people are talking about Crown Shot, which BDS has in the ERLs right now. If Crown Shot comes up to this team, I think they have a higher floor. And it might be a higher ceiling as well. I'm not going to say. I was really big on Xmatty coming into the year. He was somebody whose tape I really loved in the LFL. And so I would like to see him get a little bit more of a chance here. But, if he's going to play like this, maybe you do just have to go to Crown Shot and just say, like, well, at least we know that he's not going to be terrible. But Limit, this is 2021 summer Limit. This is the Schalke that finished 10th Limit. He is showing a lot of the bad traits that he had last year. So he needs to get back to where he was in 2020, 2019. That more consistent Limit. The Limit that I think a lot of people really associate with, late SK during that time. And then, he comes over to Schalke and they have that big run at the beginning of spring. I think that's the Limit that they need to see here on BDS, and he's not showing that. He's showing the worst parts of himself. As for Adam in the top lane, Adam's mistakes aren't getting covered up anymore. It's really as simple as that. I thought he was a player that was going to be a lot more proactive on this team because he was like the focal point. I imagined a bunch of resources just being dumped into him and him being kind of given the keys to just carry the team. That has not been the way they've wanted to play that. They wanted to leave Adam a little bit more alone on an island. That's certainly not what I would do in this scenario. I think Adam has the skill to be able to carry this. He's just not the player that's going to be consistent without resources. Kind of similar to Broken Blade in that respect. So, definitely a weird start to the year for BDS, but congrats to Vitality on getting their first win of the year. They actually had a really good week here, which we'll get to, but definitely a necessary start here and a necessary consistency breaker in order for them to get their minds and, everything back on track to continue their season on and push for one of the top 2 or 3 slots in Europe, which I do think is accessible for them. Now, jumping into the final game here of day 1, we had a top-of-the-table clash here between Mad Lions and Rogue that actually sees Rogue continue their undefeated ways and go to 4-0, taking down the Mad Lions in a huge, huge win for this team that really proved... It's going to prove pivotal, I think, for their confidence through the rest of the year. They needed this, and they looked great in this one. I want to give a shout-out, honestly... when we're talking about Rogue and who played well this game and who's played well all season long, it's been all 5 of them. I think that's really been the most important part of Rogue to me, is it really feels like all 5 members are gelling and pushing forward and being big reasons why this team is winning. No one feels like a background player right now. Everyone feels like a clear reason why this team is doing super well. Some players that I think have shown ridiculous improvement, not even just from last year to this year, but just stage time, it's crazy to see the leaps that they have made, are the bot lane here with Rogue. Comp, if you want to tell me that Comp was, like, really good on Vitality and, that he showed all this and, this positioning teamfight god that he has become on Rogue was always there, you're just lying to me. This is a guy who, he was fine on Vitality, he wasn't necessarily a problem, but we have to remember where this narrative was. I mean, LeBron was the guy on Vitality that people were excited about. Comp was good, but he wasn't great. I was higher on Comp, I think, on Vitality than a lot of people were. I remember getting a lot of comments in my LEC Power Rankings video last year telling me that. But, even so, I don't think we've never seen this level of play out of comp on stage before. And the same with Trimby. Trimby was kind of, he was selectively good last year, but he has been phenomenal to start this year. One of the best supports in the LEC in general, which is just a big surprise to me because he wasn't that last year when this team was super good. And you would have expected, you know, maybe a little regression with some of the talent around them regressing. That has not been the case. Malrang has been phenomenal for this team ever since coming in. He's been a very vocally positive presence for this team. I think everything is clicking for Rogue, and I can't be anything but happy for them. Oh, by the way, congrats to Otoamne as well. 1K kills in the LEC. That is quite the accomplishment. He absolutely has dominated this league for a long enough time. And he's, honestly, it feels like just hitting his prime right now. He's playing some of the best league he's ever played this year. Looking good on the Camille. And then the one player I haven't talked about yet, Larson, is my player of the game here, who dominates on the Victor. Yes, it's a great matchup into the Ryze. Not really sure what you're doing blind picking Ryze with Victor up, but Larson gets a lot of attention, and he does really well with it. Regular season Larson is here. Yes, you know, he's had some struggles. He's had his fair share of struggles in the playoffs, but Larson is a player that I think does get slept on a little bit as one of the better mids in the LEC. Definitely one of the more consistent ones in the regular season. He's been really, really good for the past year or two, even 3 years if you really want to go back that far. He's been really good for Rogue here, and he looked really good on the Victor, you know, kind of propelling them to a win here. But Mad Lions, you know, obviously they've had such a good start to the year. A little bit of an unfortunate loss here. I want to give a shout out to Unforgiven, who actually had a really good game. You could argue that he played better than Comp for 90% of this game, and then just the team fight happened. But Unforgiven is actually looking like a really good pickup for Mad Lions. What a shocker. They do this over and over again where they just keep finding good talent in the ERLs that I'm not necessarily seeing. They did it last year with El Yoya, although El Yoya was pretty obvious that he was going to be a pretty good player. And then the year before, obviously, they did it with Karzi. So, you know, this is a team that has for sure found a way to scout the ERLs that other teams have not. Unforgiven is looking like a fantastic pickup. He's actually created a nice synergy here with Kaiser. And I think that those two could be a really good bot lane in the LEC. But, man, we got to talk about Armut this game, don't we? He just looked lost on this Ornn. This is not a pick that he looked very comfortable on. He's my dud of the game easily here. He got absolutely destroyed in that top lane, pretty much 1v1 into the Camille. His build was definitely questionable, but he played it questionable as well. I've never been a huge fan of Armut on more passive picks like this, picks that, you know, kind of want a wet noodle fight in the top lane, and into Camille kind of have to play a little bit more careful. He doesn't have that play style. That's not really a part of his game, and that definitely showed in this one where he just got absolutely wrecked. This could have gone to Reeker in the mid lane. I definitely think the mid gap was real as well, but I think the matchup was definitely a lot worse in the mid lane. Not to say that that's not Reeker's fault for saying, hey, I want to Ryze, you know, and, you know, even with Victor possibly there, but, you know, we had a lot of a jungle attention mid, you know, all that stuff, and I think they lost equally hard, and if you lose equally hard and one of you's getting camped and one of you's losing 1v1, the 1v1 player probably played worse, and that's kind of what happened with Armut there. So Armut is going to be my dud of the series here, but, you know, shout out to the bot lane. They played all right. Really the shining light here for Mad in this series, but big win here for Rogue. They look like a legitimate top tier team, and hopefully they can continue that going into the rest of the year. Jumping in now to day 2, our day 2 kickoff here in week 2 was SK Gaming taking on Excel, and certainly a way to start the day. What a game. I feel like we have at least one of these a week here, not even just in the LEC, but in every region, sometimes more. The LPL certainly has had it, the LCK has certainly had it to start this year, where it's just like, ooh, this game was not good. Not good at all, from either team, really. Excel gets out to a pretty gigantic lead in this one, gets Soul, and then completely loses their minds. I have no other way to describe what happened in this game, other than Excel plays the early game really well. Marcoon gets a ton of advantages for his team on the Lee Sin, and then they get Soul, they have complete map control, and then they just start running it down over and over and over again. Nuke Duck over and over and over again. This certainly is the year of the Duck. Nuke Duck has had a horrendous start to the year, in my opinion. He has easily been the biggest weakness on this Excel team, because he's not looked good in any way, shape, or form. But Thank God for Patrick, right? Patrick kind of saves the game, is just strong enough on the Aphelios at that point to just win team fights and basically wins the game for the team. He's going to be my player of the game. I know Marcoon had a really good early game, and, you know, he was fine late. I guess he didn't have any, like, ridiculously standout bad plays, but they don't win this game without Patrick, and it's scary to say because of how ahead they were, but they really don't win this game without Patrick, which is kind of the case. Finn played well as well in those team fights. Malphite engages are huge when your team is kind of struggling, and he hit a really good one to win them the game. So, yeah, Excel wins this one by the skin of their teeth. I do want to point out, because it is, you know, like I said, I'm recording this on the 27th of January. It came out, I believe, yesterday or maybe the day before. Ad Vienna is now out for Excel. Mickey X is in. I do feel a little bit bad for Ad Vienna because, honestly, he's played pretty well to start this year. He's definitely not been the weakness for this team, and he's definitely showed things last year that make me feel like, you know, he's definitely improve uponable. I would like to see him in the LEC. He's definitely someone who I think is LEC caliber and LEC capable. But when you have the opportunity to get Mickey X, pair him up with Patrick, maybe have one of the better bot lanes in all of the LEC, you know, I can understand why Excel would want to take an opportunity like that. Even branding-wise, you know, Excel's not the biggest brand in the world. Mickey's a pretty famous player, at least in terms of the LEC, so to be able to get Mickey, I get it. It just feels a little bad for Ad Vienna. If this is his last game in the LEC, that really sucks, because, you know, he played all right here on the Leona, set up for Patrick, a good peel late game, and then, you know, was fine early. The bot lane really was the good part. I just hope it's not the last we see of him in the LEC, but let's talk about SK and where they went wrong here. Where they went wrong here was, I can flame really hard here, and I'm going to, was picking up Gilius in the offseason. He has been atrocious to start this year, and he was horrible in this game. I don't think there were any excuses for how bad Gilius played for a majority of this game on the Xin Zhao. I don't know if this is just not his pick. I know he can play the Xin Zhao. It's just, holy lord, this was bad. This is one of the worst games that we've seen from a single player in the LEC at all this year. He was, like, single-handedly losing SK this game. Although Jezu was kind of on that train as well on the Ziggs, just not doing anything. Just a disastrous performance here from Gilius. He's easily my dud of the game. This is a dud of the week level performance. And he didn't even play that poorly in the game one, but he's going to be in the conversation for dud of the week purely because how horrible was this game, you know? But SK looked like a bottom-tier team. There's really no other way to put it. Honestly, Excel looked like a bottom-tier team. I keep holding out hope for this team to kind of prove me wrong, because when they lose well, and when they win poorly. It's just such a weird team right now. I think they're going to look a little bit better with Mickey, or at least that's the hope. That, you know, if you don't look better with Mickey, then Ad Vienna, you know, should be in there, because Ad Vienna, you know, you have that young upside, that growth potential from him, but you know, you would hope this team can look better with Mickey. Right now, they look fine, maybe a just outside of playoffs team. SK look like a disaster. They're never going to win if the team plays like this. You have Gilius running it down at every possible opportunity. Jezu doing almost nothing on the Ziggs. You know, Treats plays well here, again, on the Nautilus, but, you know, how much can you really do when you have no engage? I think Gen X played well in the top lane as well, at least in the fights. That Jace damage kind of goes crazy. And then Certus gets a pick he's a little more comfortable on here on the LeBlanc, but you know, SK still looks like a bottom-tier team. I mean, the bottom of the LEC is pretty clear right now. You've got Astralis looking in. You've got BDS looking in. I think SK is right there with them. All of these teams look absolutely disastrous. I think Excel is going to be happy to pick up a win here, but it was certainly not a clean one by any stretch of the imagination. Jumping into Game 2 here, we had Mad Lions taking on Astralis in a nice bounce-back win for Mad that they desperately needed after kind of getting outclassed a little bit yesterday by Rogue. A win that I think solidified some of the players that maybe played not as well in that game, while also continuing on from where they did look well. Look good. Well, what am I talking about? Anyways, Armut's going to be my player of the game here. He was pretty dominant on that Aatrox. The game was kind of back and forth-ish, honestly. I'll say this early before we talk about Astralis. This is easily the best game Astralis has played all year long. They've looked really lost in almost every game before this. But this one they looked pretty coordinated, pretty competent for the most part. They actually had a decent chance of winning this game. Unfortunately, Armut just got too big on the Aatrox and was able to kind of take over those team fights late. With a Jinx on your side, it was really difficult for Astralis to actually do anything. Although, they threw some team fights in the late game that they maybe could have won, so a little bit interesting. We'll get to that later. Arma played really well, though. He kind of took over the late game here on the Aatrox, got ahead. He had that really, really rough Ornn game earlier in the week. Definitely bouncing back here on a pick that is much more his playstyle in Aatrox. Love that pick for them right now. I know Aatrox isn't super good in the meta, but does it even really matter? Aatrox is always going to be good at what he's good at, which is flanking in team fights and being really hard to kill, which is exactly what happened here for Mad Lions. Big shout out to Unforgiven as well. He's looking like an absolute steal. I said it in the Rogue series. He looked good against Rogue. He was arguably the better AD carry in that series against Comp, even though Comp played that last team fight really well. And he was great in this one, too. He's looking like maybe one of the best AD carries in the LEC. At least he's looking like it right now. I'm not saying that he's going to be that all year long, but he's had a phenomenal start to the year. And he's been a big reason why this Mad Lions team, I think, has so much momentum right now going into, week 3 and beyond. But let's talk about where this team maybe struggled a bit. And I think mid lane is definitely the big place to look for that. Reeker has not had the most consistent start to the year. Although I think he's been, good at points. There are definitely games where I think Reeker has played really well for this Mad Lions team. There's also games where he's completely let them down. I don't think he was really positive in this game on the Victor. I know, Victor's more of a passive pick, but it's a pick you should be able to carry on in these late game team fights. Luckily, Arma and Unforgiven were able to kind of pick up on that, but Reeker definitely has more to show as that rookie coming in. I knew one of these rookies was going to be a little more inconsistent. Unfortunately, I picked the wrong one. I thought it would be Unforgiven. I thought Reeker was going to be the more consistent one coming in, but I was wrong on that respect. Kaiser with another good game here on the Zilean. The Zilean, a pick that apparently Astralis has absolutely no idea how to deal with. Let's talk about Astralis, and let's talk about how these team fights went in the late game. They really should have won this game. Kabe was playing really well early on the lethality. Xayah, it's a pick I know he really enjoys. He keeps going to it over and over again. He actually played really well this game on it. It's a pick I think can work in certain scenarios. This is not one of the scenarios. I usually think you like to pick that into more engaged supports. But, the Zilean can theoretically work too, I guess. But the Xayah was pretty strong. It got ahead in this game. Zanzara went bot, with the Jarvan, got the Xayah some gold. Zanzara got some gold. And then these late game team fights come around and they just forget about Zilean, or Dior specifically forgets about Zilean because he Vex ults in over, and I believe he does it twice. The last 2 team fights of the game, he Vex ults in, goes for the blow up assassination and Zilean ult. And all of a sudden, now you're just dead for nothing. And he does it twice, not once, but twice. So yeah, Dior's going to be my dud of the game here. You got to be smarter than that. I mean, you gotta expect with a Zilean on the team that you can't just dive in the backline and completely blow them up. You gotta know that you're going to get, stomped on that. You're going to get stopped. You're going to get, countered if you're going to all in a Zilean ult. And that's exactly what happened, which is really sad for Astralis because they had this game in the palm of their hands. Bot lane was really strong. Kabe and Promiscu actually played really well in this game. Definitely Promiscu's best game of the year, but Kabe's best game of the year by far as well. This bot lane's been really weak up till this point, and I think that they definitely played well in this one. And then I thought, Zanzara had a decent game early, maybe not so much late, but Dior kind of throwing away those team fights kind of made it a little more difficult for everybody on the team. So a decent performance overall from Astralis, definitely the best that we've seen from them all year. Somebody I think pointed out, they've really only played playoff teams up till this point. They have yet to play one of the consensus bottom 4 teams. And maybe they're not the worst team in the league, although they have to prove that to me before I just believe it. They have to actually beat a team like BDS or SK Gaming for me to believe that they're not just the worst team in the league. But, they definitely, in this game showed that they have some level of competence, mostly stemming from the bot lane, Kabe specifically having a really good game. And then Promiscu looking good on the Rakan, which has easily been his best pick of the year so far. But for Mad Lions, you needed this win. Unforgiven looks great. He's actually probably been the best performing member of this team in 2022 so far. Armut has a good bounce back game. If you can get Reeker to kind of be a little more consistent in that mid lane, I think this team is still a top level team. It's just about getting that game in and game out from these players. Moving on to game 3 here of day 2, we had Team BDS taking on Rogue. And a really solid win here for Rogue that no one is surprised about. I want to give a real quick round of applause here to Rogue because they are the first bot lane in the world to win on Lucian Nami. Wow, I'm so proud of them. I hate them at the same time because maybe that means other people are going to pick it now, and it's bad. It's really not good in any way. But they do go ahead. They pick this super hyper early game comp here. You have the Trundle, you have the Lucian Nami. Even the Jace in the top lane is like there to just poke out the Graves and just be like, screw you. Love it. Love what I see out of Rogue here. This is the kind of confidence that they had last year, but they lost their two best players. And they still have that kind of confidence. And the two players that have come in have looked really freaking good. Malrang's going to be my player of the game here on the Trundle. Just kind of took over the map at all points in time. This is a pick I really liked for him. He was really aggressive on this. Lee Sin was a pick I really liked on him back in the day when he was in Korea. Trundle, I don't want to say Trundle fills a similar purpose to Lee Sin, but Trundle is that early game ganking style, you know, get your lanes ahead kind of carry in that same way. And I think he really plays that style to the highest potential. He was able to get Comp a lot of gold. He was able to get Larson a lot of gold. Odo got a lot of gold. Everyone got gold in this game. So good on Rogue. I want to give a small shout out here to Larson. Larson is someone who I think has been really passive. You know, he's known to be more of a passive mid laner, especially when it comes to like playoff games and games at Worlds and games that matter. It is really good to see him on Rise, flashing forward to get kills. It's just not something we've seen out of him in a lot of seasons past, but we're seeing it now. This team just seems to have an extra edge that they didn't have last year, and I really, really like to see that. Odo's playing the best League of Legends of his career. Comp and Trimby have really come into their own. Trimby was someone who consistently got better all of last year. He started out really poor and then kind of got better as the year went on, had a decent playoffs, and then kind of had a really bad Worlds. But whatever he's worked on in the offseason has definitely paid off because his Nami this game was phenomenal. This is the best Nami game we've seen globally by far. It's a pick we saw him really troll on at the World Championships in general. And so to see him come out and play really well on it here, I think is a good sign. Yes, it's into a bad team, but it is worth noting this Rogue team is just kind of firing on all cylinders right now. As for BDS, not a good game. Adam's my dud of the game. No surprise. He really did troll on this Graves. He looks tilted beyond belief. And, we know Adam can kind of get like that, at least a little bit in game. I'm not saying anything about their out-of-game experience here. But in game, we know that when Adam is struggling, he can get a little tilted. We saw it on Fnatic last year. When he's losing, it doesn't necessarily... He's not the type to lose gracefully, in game at least. And that was certainly true in this one. He just got abused. He was not good in this one. Definitely the worst game of the year from him so far, but this bot lane is still a gigantic weakness. Xmatty, I was high on him going into the year. At this point, it's got to just be said, he's probably not good enough to play in the LEC right now. Targamas probably made him look a lot better in the LFL than he actually was. And I'm willing to accept that. Do I think he could eventually get there? Yeah, I do. I think he has a lot of mechanical skill, but it's certainly looking like he is not there right now. Syncroft didn't have that good of a game on the Lee Sin either. Got completely outjuggled by Malrang early. Really, the only player on this team who had any semblance of a game at all was Nuclearant, but even then, he still got pretty hard outplayed by Larson. BDS is just a bottom-tier team, and Rogue is a top-tier team. This is exactly how you would expect this matchup to go. So, overall, tough loss here for BDS. Your team's kind of crumbling around you. You gotta make some changes. Bot lane's probably not gonna last too much longer here. We'll see how much longer. I mean, their ERL bot lane is looking really good right now, and so we'll see how long it takes before they pull the plug and just promote them. But for Rogue, on the other hand, I mean, you've started the season 5-0. It's a perfect start, and you really couldn't ask for anything more. Your new additions are playing great, and your players that you kept are kind of stepping up and showing some of the best that they've ever shown. So, I mean, really, is there anything else to say other than good things for Rogue at this point? Moving on to Game 4 here of Day 2, we had Fnatic taking on Misfits Gaming, a battle of two teams with good records, but as you probably know from my analysis, I do not think these teams are on the same tier, and that was definitely proven in this game with Fnatic having maybe the shortest game of the year so far in the LEC, an absolute domination of Misfits here on the back of pretty much everybody on this team playing phenomenally. Fnatic is the standard bearer in Europe right now. I have no other way to say it. They are rolling on all cylinders. This bot lane's the best in the LEC. They have the best top laner in the LEC right now. Humanoid on this Twisted Fate looked completely unlocked. and was able to do anything he wanted. Razork, of all people, has been the weak link of this Fnatic team. And then you look at the other side, Misfits, he was the strength of Misfits last year, along with VTO. So it's just crazy how freaking good Fnatic is. Hylissang can literally play anything at this point, and he's going to play it like he's playing Leona. And it's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. His Braum, how do you give player of the game to Braum? But, like, he was clearly the best player in this game. Like, I'm not giving it to Hylissang just because he's, you know, had this really good season up till this point, and, you know, the narrative is kind of behind him with this KDA god or whatever, right? He really genuinely was the best player in this game. Hylissang is my player of the game, obviously, here. I could have gone to upset here on the Caitlyn, who did play really well. I'm not sure Caitlyn got hit this game. Like, I don't know if Caitlyn even took an auto this game. I mean, seriously, it was ridiculous how easy this game must have felt for upset to just dominate in. Everything going right for Fnatic. As for Misfits, this is VTO versus the world. This is exactly what we expected. Misfits is a decent team. They are not on the level of Fnatic and Rogue and, you know, some of these other top teams. They're not on the level of Mad Lions and G2. If they sneak into playoffs, it's going to be in that 6th spot that I think is pretty up for grabs right now, and it's going to be thanks to VTO, who really is the only player on this team who is playing well at the moment. Shlatan is proving me right when I said I wasn't that hyped going into this year on him. When you pick Jarvan, you gotta do something early game, and he did nothing early game. Neon is going to be my dud of the game here in the bot lane. He didn't do anything. Not only did he not do anything, but there were some team fights later in the game that he just wasn't at because he was farming waves. You gotta be better than that. There's just nothing else to say. His macro was very questionable in this one. Neon was someone I hyped up. You know, I think he can be a secondary carry. Along with VTO on this team, he was not in this game. When you pick the Yuumi to accentuate the Jinx, you really gotta, you know, make that work. This is a little bit of draft diff, in my opinion. I think Fnatic kind of got everything they wanted here. The Akali in the top lane is certainly a pick for wonder right now. It won't be in weeks to come because Akali's dead in the water now, thank God. But, you know, while it's here, you get the Twisted Fate mid, which is always a good pick. And then the Caitlyn bot lane. I mean, there's a reason that Caitlyn is the highest pick ban percentage champion in the world right now. It's because when Caitlyn gets on the Rift, if she's allowed to just play the game, if you spend attention bot lane with like a TF or a Xin Zhao, you know, if you give her resources, she's just going to win you the game, period. And that's exactly what happened here. Just a little bit of a draft diff. Yamato's done a great job with that earlier in the year. Whoever is picking for Fnatic has done a phenomenal job with draft early in the year. But yeah, Hylissang player of the game, Neon dud of the game. A really solid win here for Fnatic. Misfits just can't win games if VTO doesn't hard carry. It's a little bit sad to see, but, you know, they still have the opportunity to be a good team. The reports of them being like a 3-1 team and being on the same level as like G2 and Mad Lions, that's just not the case in my opinion. And I think we're seeing that in a matchup like this. That brings us to our final game of week 2 here, and that was a really good one with G2 Esports taking on Team Vitality in a matchup of some former teammates going head-to-head here in the mid lane, Caps and Perks, and some feisty words obviously being thrown on Twitter before this year and everything. What a game here from Vitality, picking up the win for a 2-0 week. I know I was talking earlier in the week about how it felt like Vitality was just gapping BDS in every aspect, like individually, every lane won basically by themselves. And I was like, it's BDS, you know, it's fine, it's not gonna happen again. Well, they just did it again, but to G2, so maybe this Vitality team is actually good after all. What a shocker. It's insane. Whatever Perks did this past week to go from maybe the worst player in the LEC last week, maybe the dud of the week, to a guy who just... he's got like 14 or 15 CS per minute in both games. Like, I don't know what happened to Perks in the last, 5 days or whatever, 6 days, but God, he went God mode, and he was phenomenal. He's my player of the game here, and he absolutely deserved it. His Orianna shockwaves were phenomenal in fights as well. Not only was he super ahead in lane, he was really important in those fights as well. Getting a lot of jungle assistance here from Selfmade, who also had a really good game on the Xin Zhao. Big shout out to the bot lane. Carzzy is basically the best, like, low resource bot laner I can think of right now in the LEC. Maybe Unforgiven, but Unforgiven's still pretty high resource. Carzzy just does so well with no resources. The Aphelios Thresh here is really freaking good. Yes, you're into the Caitlyn Zyra, which is a super interesting lane, which I will talk about in a minute. But you leave Alphari on an island in the top lane. I think that's honestly probably for the best. Alphari can pick something like a Gangplank here, which he did. It's his best pick, of all time. Obviously, he's one of the best Gangplanks, if not the best Gangplank in the world. And he can just sit weak side and be fine and not worry about it too much. And you can give your attention to Perks, who can do really well in games like this, which he absolutely did. The Orianna took over. He absolutely deserved player of the game. It could go to Selfmade, but, Selfmade played really well is what I mean, but Perks played really, really, really well. As for G2, honestly kind of got gapped in every lane. There's really no other way to say it. Top lane definitely got gapped. Alphari on the Gangplank was just better than Broken Blade on Gragas. Broken Blade is, I've hyped him up a little bit this year, but he's still the same player we always knew. And putting Broken Blade on tank duty, low resource tank duty, is not going to work. He's not that kind of player who can pull that kind of style off. And that was very clear in this game. He whiffed a lot of Gragas ults. This is clearly not a pick that he is very comfortable on. I would very much not expect to see G2 go back to this at any point for the rest of the year, because he was really, really bad in this game. Caps was not so good on Corki. Caps was at like 10 CS a minute or something. Like, he was farming fine, and then you look over at Perks and he's like 60 CS down. It's ludicrous, but Caps still got pretty gapped here in the mid lane, which is really funny to see, because Caps, Caps versus Perks, Caps getting gapped. But, he didn't have the worst game of anybody in this game by any means. My dud of the game is going to go to Targamas at support here, who picks the Zyra. You have the Caitlyn Zyra lane. You're like, okay, so I guess they're just going to go, like, super lane aggression. This is like, I couldn't get Lux, so I'm going Zyra, even though Lux was available. I'm going Zyra and just going to poke out the Aphelios into oblivion, take over with the Caitlyn. But you go tank Zyra. And tank Zyra, well, yeah, you can survive the Thresh Hook engage, and Aphelios can't kill you, but you don't really do any damage, and that's kind of a problem. Yeah, the Zyra was really useless. This game did absolutely nothing. Tank Zyra does no damage at all. And we definitely saw that. Targamas did almost nothing. Looked super useless this game. It was a cool pick. It was cool to see, but super giga useless. My dud of the game for sure. Honestly, everybody on G2 didn't play that well. There really wasn't anybody that stood out as having a good performance. Flack had got some kills, but he's playing Caitlyn, and he still got outplayed in the bot lane by Carzzy and Labrov. So just a really good win for Vitality across the board. Everybody on the team played really, really well. It's exactly what you wanted to see. This was the perfect week for Vitality. They completely gapped BDS, and then they completely gapped G2. Really the perfect week. I think the rumors of their death were greatly exaggerated. As for G2, they did not look good in this game. This kind of highlights some of the issues that I have with this G2 team, which is top lane kind of has to be on a more aggressive pick. And right now, mid's just not playing super well. Really, that's all there is to it, is Caps has to play better, and, that's not happening right now. Hopefully we can get 2020 Caps back, but right now we're getting 2021 Summer Caps, which is maybe even worse. Honestly, this might be the worst that Caps has ever looked, so not exactly what you want to see out of G2, but gosh, if you're a Vitality fan, you're nothing but ecstatic right now. And that is going to do it for my Week 2 LEC recaps and analysis. Now up on the screen right now, on the left, you are going to see the current LEC standings. Any ties in record will be broken alphabetically at the moment. So Fnatic over Rogue is just F is before R alphabetically. And then on the right, you are going to see my personal power rankings along with how they have changed from last week. Let's talk about the biggest risers and the biggest fallers. Vitality jumping back up to number 2 here. They looked phenomenal this week, and I know their record doesn't necessarily represent it yet, but I do see this as the second best team in the LEC, only behind Fnatic. And honestly, I'm really, really, really excited to see those two teams play again. But right now, Vitality, really, whatever their problems were in week 1, seem to be gone. Rogue also jumping up to number 3 here from number 5. Another really solid week here, a huge win over Mad Lions that really solidified that this team is really freaking good. It's just about whether or not they can hold on to that through the whole year. Mad Lions and G2 both dropping down too. Both taking pretty big losses this week, Mag to Rogue and then G2 to Vitality. They both seem like good teams, but maybe not teams that are elite level teams. We're going to have to see that in the future. And then Misfits barely keeping, or I guess gaining, that 6th playoff spot. That 6th spot is wide open. There's a huge gap between 5 and everyone below it to me. Misfits right now do hold that 6th spot purely because of how good VTO is, but, Excel drops out of it. Maybe with Mickey coming in, they could jump into that 7th spot. And then the bottom 3 stayed the same. They all had pretty terrible weeks, so it's hard to really distinguish which one was worse. My player of the week here is going to go to Larson on Rogue. I thought Larson showed a lot of really good things this week, and a lot of things that we hadn't necessarily seen out of him before. So he's going to get my week 2 player of the week. And then my week 2 dud of the week is going to go to Limit on BDS. That bot lane is just a disaster overall, and Limit had a week 2 forget. Definitely a week a lot closer to his Schalke 2021 summer than his 2021 spring performance. So definitely a week to forget for Limit. But yeah, Larson, my player of the week. Limit, my dud of the week. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please go ahead and leave a like. It really does mean a lot to me. Likes really show me that you guys like the content that I'm making. And honestly, you guys are the reason I make this content in general at all, really. So if you liked it, let me know down in the comment section below as well. Let me know what was your favorite match of the week, some of the players that you thought really stood out, some of the teams you thought stood out, whatever you want to talk about. Go ahead and put that down in the comment section below. I hope you all are having a great day. I hope you continue to have a great day, and I will see you all later.